Welcome to the Humans Outside podcast, where we focus on heading outdoors from our perch in Alaska while hearing from fascinating outside-minded guests. I'm Amy Bouchatz, and since 2017, I've spent at least 20 consecutive minutes outside every single day. On this show, we hear from others who make heading into nature just a part of who they are too. Ready? Here we go. American kids spend an average of 1,200 hours a year in front of screens. And of course, that number fluctuates as experts look at that. Ginny Yurich, who holds a master's in education and homeschools her 5 kids, decided if it was possible for her kids to spend that much time a year in front of a screen, they could spend at least 1,000 hours outside each year. You know, here at Humans Outside, my goal is to spend at least 20 consecutive minutes outside every single day, which I felt like was a big old commitment given my busy life. So when I read that Ginny and her family are making 1,000 hours a year, that's about 3 hours a day, by the way, happen, I just knew I had to talk to her. And as we're thinking about back to school after an amazing summer outside, what better time to talk about the practicalities of building a life outdoors into your kids' everyday habits than now? Ginny, welcome to the Humans Outside podcast. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, we start all of our episodes imagining ourselves having this conversation in our guest's favorite outdoor space. Tell me, where are we with you today?
Um, that's a tricky question because I like all of our outdoor adventures, whether it's in our backyard or a local park. But I really am partial to Asheville, North Carolina. Have you ever been there?
I have driven through.
Um,
Driven through.
so it's like waterfall mecca there, and our favorite one is called Slide Rock. Um, it also might be called Sliding Rock. uh, but anyway, it's like this 60-foot waterfall, um, this big kind of flat sloping waterfall that you can ride,
Oh, you know what? I
and
saw a
it
picture
drops
of
you
that
off
on
in
your
this.
blog.
Oh, it's so cool, and it drops you off in this freezing cold pool of water at the bottom, and you just go over and over again. So
I'm so glad you told us about that because I saw a picture of that on your blog and I thought, man, I got to
it's
go
like
there.
it's a bucket list place for sure. It's really phenomenal. And then there's so many other waterfalls in the area.
We visited in Missouri, I think, a place called Johnson's Shut-ins, which is very similar. Makes it sound like there's a bunch of lonely folks there, but no, it's rocks,
Yeah.
and they are natural waterfalls like that.
Oh, so
But
cool.
yeah, very cool.
There's one in
Definite.
there's one in Sedona too, and that's where I get them confused. I think the one in Sedona is called Slide Rock State Park, and then
Okay,
the one in North Carolina is called Sliding Rock. They're
fair enough.
awesome. So fun.
Awesome. Well, listeners, add that to your list, you guys, because that sounds so fantastic. So, from one outdoor challenge person to another, although my 20 minutes sounds really puny now.
Your 20 minutes sounds fabulous.
Start by telling us how your 1,000 hours came to be. Give us all the background.
Okay, so mine actually started a little opposite of the realization of screen time came later.
Okay.
Our journey outside started with just being completely overwhelmed. And really, it was in my own personal journey at the very, very beginning with having young kids. And our first 3 kids were really close in age. They were like 2 and under. And, um, and I was sort of drowning trying to get through the day with the 3 little ones. And, my husband had a job where his commute was an hour. So he was gone, 10 and a half hours a day. And um, I was really struggling, like in every area, emotionally, sort of with this massive amount of needs that I felt like I could not meet, and and I really didn't know what to do with my kids. It's like you have these babies, and there sort of is no direction, like, what are we gonna do? And I had ideas for certain schedules, but they don't ever follow the schedule. So we did, like, the library programs. We signed up for classes, and, because that's sort of what I thought that everyone else was doing, and we signed up for library classes and swim and music class, and it was expensive and also, so difficult to manage. I'm trying to pack up for 3 kids, and they're all in diapers and they're all nursing, and it was such a monumental effort to get them to the swim class or to get them to the library program and to sit through it for 45 minutes. And I felt like every day, by 11 a.m., I was so exhausted and sort of done. And I'd have 7 hours until my husband came home. So I just, I wanted so badly to enjoy those early years, and I was drowning. And so what happened for me was I had a friend from church who was planning on homeschooling her kids. So she was starting her research because her kids were a little older than mine, and she came across this educator who didn't even have children of her own, um, from like, right around like 1900, a long time ago. Her name is Charlotte Mason, and she has like these volumes written about education and children and family and parenting and all of these. She was like prolific, and these ideas that she had way back then are still sort of, a lot of them hold true today. They're like research based. So one of her ideas was that kids should spend 4 to 6 hours outside a day on any tolerable day. So obviously in Alaska is not going to be every day. We're in
But you're
Michigan.
in
We're in
Michigan, which is
Michigan,
not
so
every
it's
day
not every
either.
day either. And so my friend had said, I want to try this out. And Amy, I just thought she was like absurd. I thought, well, what a silly idea. What are kids going to do for 4 to 6 hours? And, you know, this common sort of path of parenting, things last like 45 minutes to an hour. If you sign
Mhm.
your kid up for soccer, everything is sort of in these smaller chunks of time. And so it was sort of this life.
And not just that, like, if you sign your kid up for soccer, after 45 minutes, they're done, you're done, we're all done. It's
It's
done.
done, it's over, and so it seems to sort of be this modern way that we parent, and to the point where I thought this idea was, like, completely, um, ludicrous, I'm like, "How is this really gonna work?" So the life-changing decision here was just saying yes to that. So
Mm,
she said, "We're gonna meet at this park," and it wasn't a playground, it was this flat open field. There was a creek that ran through, there was ducks, there's a little bridge, and she says, "Let's try it. We're gonna meet from 9 to 1, pack a picnic." And I couldn't wrap my mind around, like, "Well, how is this gonna go? Like, we don't have anything for them to do, should I be bringing things?" And so I just bought a picnic lunch, I bought a picnic blanket. I had, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a nursing baby, and she had somewhat similar. Her kids were a little older, and what happened was I sat on a picnic blanket for 4 hours with my nursing baby and had a conversation with my friend, and the kids just ran around and played. And my
mm,
mind was blown, um, because I didn't leave exhausted.
mm,
I left refreshed, and it was my first experience of that kind where it something worked. Um, and so, at the very beginning, it was just for myself. Like, how do I get through these expansive days with these young kids? And very quickly, and within weeks, I started to notice that my kids were like more coordinated, and they were just developing rapidly, and putting two and two together with this time outside, we were getting together like 3 days a week. It worked out so well that we're like, let's do this 3 days a week. We're going to meet up at different local parks, we can do little hikes, um, and we're going to meet from 9 to 1, and we bring our picnic. And so we started doing it 3 days a week, and the this the differences developmentally in my kids were substantial. And
mm.
so in time, I came across, there's so much research about and so many books, like Richard Louv has Last Child in the Woods, and Angela Hanscom has Barefoot and Balanced, and there's so many about play and all these fabulous books, and it's good for adults too. So we we kind of changed our whole lifestyle,
Mm.
and it was fabulous. We're all thriving, right? And we were doing it for about 2 years and just never running into other kids. And when I say never, it's not an exaggeration. Occasionally at a playground, kids would come and go, but like out on the hiking trails, and we live sort of in the Metro Detroit area, it's very populated. Like,
Right.
we've moved out into the country a little bit at this point, but back then we were sort of in total suburbia. So these parks were not any, you know, anywhere on the outskirts. They're 5 minutes from people's homes, or it's very close, and just never running into other children. And so I am a math major. I don't even know what made me think to add up how much time we were spending outside, but I'm like, well, I'll add it up. If we're doing these like 4 hours, 3 days a week, and some time on the weekends, we were getting about 18 to 20 hours outside
Mhm.
every week. So added it up and it was 1,200 hours a year. And I happened to right around the same time see that that was the average amount of time that kids spend on screens every year. It's about 1,200 hours. And so what hit me the most was not that, screens are evil. Screens definitely have a great use and they're helpful for so many things. But what I realized was kids are losing out on so many experiences. The
Mhm.
1,200 hours in a year is like this depth and breadth of experience, of these relationship building things, of these things that honor my kids' development and help me thrive as a mother and help me be present. You can't even really put into words how how many memories you build in 1,200 hours in a year. And so that was sort of the impetus to the blog, which um and the movement, which I call 1,000 hours outside because it's a little catchier.
Right.
um I don't know, it gives people a little more leeway too, 1,200 hours versus 1,000. And so the point is, that if we have this time to spend and we have it going to screens, what would life look like if we flip-flopped a bit? And so, it's really the simplest thing. It's about being intentional with our time, knowing that there are academic, emotional, social, and physical benefits, and extremely good ones when we take our kids outside to play. So that was sort of the start of it. It's been around since 2013. It has waxed and waned. We've had more kids and moved and job changes and the like. But over the last 18 months, been able to put a little more time to it, um, and people are doing it all over the world. There's a little freedom in it because you can you can revolve it around your own life.
Right. Right.
Everyone has hard seasons, and we also have um, just different seasons based on the weather. And so here in Michigan, I mean, we'll have days when we're outside all day in the summer, 8 to
Mm.
8, and in the winter we might only get out for 20 minutes. Or we might not get out at all, or there's days when the kids are sick, or there's seasons where you have
Right.
other evening commitments, different sports things or music or the like. And so what's been neat for me to see is how it looks so different from family to family, from location to location, but the benefits are still the same.
Right. So, I want to touch on two things because I think that in a pre-COVID world, people would have been like, well, how do you possibly do that? How could your kids possibly be learning everything they need to learn, in school enough and to also make this work? Well, I think one of the things that folks have learned while doing this sort of distance learning, or you could call it homeschooling, for their kids who are usually in school, is that really learning does not take the full 8 hours that they're in school. There's just not enough work to do. The learning is a day long thing because other things are integrated in, and in your case that's going outside, right? Like, kids aren't sitting
Right,
at their desk absorbing math for 8 hours a day. They're just not.
right,
It's a different, it doesn't work the way you think it does in your mind. It's more, it's group activities, it's group learning, right, that takes that long. And when you take kids out of that environment and put them in front of books, well, the learning, our school said if your kids are learning for 2.5 hours a day, that's almost too much, right? Like, don't have them sitting in front of books doing book work that long. And of course that depends on grade level and all that stuff. So all of that other good learning is just experiences, it's getting outside, it's doing stuff. And so
sure.
yeah,
Well,
so
I
you're
think
experiencing that.
I think that, like, there is a huge misconception there in America, at least for sure. I think that most people equate sitting with learning. Like you
Hmm.
said, worksheets or listening to a teacher. There's a really good book called it's by Carla Hannaford, and it's called Smart Moves: Why Learning is is Not All in Your Head. It's that might be, I don't know if that's the tagline. It's something like that. It's called Smart Moves, and she's a PhD, and her book is all about how movement and learning are intrinsically related. So she gives this stat, which is phenomenal. She says that elderly people who dance regularly, so we're talking about complex movements, right?
Mhm.
Elderly people who dance regularly have a 76% less chance of developing dementia.
Mm.
So she has this whole, which is wild. I mean, that's a huge percentage. If you could put that into pill form, everyone would take that pill, a
Right.
76% chance less. So her whole book talks about how when we move into more complex movements, and this is what kids do naturally, right? They sit, and then they crawl, and then they stand up, and then they walk, and then they jump, and
Mhm.
then they run. And really that continues all the way through high school. My 9-year-old just got a ripstick, which is like a skateboard with only two
Okay.
wheels. I don't know. I can't even stand up on the thing. And within a couple days, his buddy had one, and within a couple days he's going down the driveway. He loves it. So, casting a fishing pole, these are all complex movements. And so as they become more complex, then it strengthens those brain connections, and the brain becomes more efficient. And so, learning is not necessarily about stuffing your mind full of facts. It's about having an adaptable, quick working brain.
Right.
So her book is fascinating, talking about, and there's so many other factors there, but academically, uh, outside time offers a lot to our kids. Learning is happening all of the time. We went down to Florida. That's what we do in February in Michigan. Not every year, but we always we try and go
We
most
we do
years.
something similar in Alaska
I'm like,
in
get me out of
February
this
too.
in
Yeah.
February. So my story has always been my sort of aha moment was we went down to Florida, and we start our kids reading a little later on than the school systems do. If they were interested, I would start younger, but our oldest was 7.5, and we started reading with him, and he caught on really quick. And he hadn't been reading for very long at all. We went down to Florida, and we were at a nature center down there, and the worker was like, watch out on this side of the building. There's a certain type of snake. I don't remember the name of the steak because I didn't know what it was. But all of a sudden,
Mhm.
my son, who had just started to learn how to read, he was 8 years old, um, he starts like spouting off all these facts about that particular snake.
Mm.
He knew how fast it moved and its habitat and what it ate. And I was like, well, hold on. I don't know any of this, and so it was eye opening to realize that kids learn even when we don't realize they're learning,
Mhm.
and that all of that learning counts. Like, it doesn't have to be the 2nd grade standards, the 3rd grade standards. Sometimes they gain all this information from their environment, from things they're interested in, and that becomes a part of them, things that they know forever.
Mhm.
Whereas some of the other book learning is just to jump through the hoops or check the boxes, and you don't remember it, years down the
Right.
road. So, um, I think parents are learning the value of baking bread, and, sort of that's what we've lost, is the value of downtime, and knowing that there's value in these hands-on things that we do, and there's a lot of value.
I think, you kind of just answered my next question, which was, you noticed that your kids were, improving. I use that word sort of loosely, like it's not like they had a
Sure.
problem, but just developing, I guess would be a better word,
Developing, sure.
developing in leaps and bounds by spending all of this time outside while you're, you know, um, cooling your heels with your friend, right? So everyone's
Right.
having a very pleasant experience. And I've totally been there carting my kids around. And I guess I'll backtrack a second to say, if you don't homeschool, you may not be aware of the pressure there, and even in that community, to do co-op and this and that and
Sure.
music and
Yes.
pool and all of this
Yeah.
stuff that's just so overwhelming. I felt like I was taking through the little bit I homeschooled. My kid was in kindergarten. I mean kindergarten. I felt like I was spending about 4,000 times more time carting him hither and thither. I'm like, this is only gonna, get worse. He's 5.
Right.
But I see these friends whose kids are in high school doing the same thing. So, it's just, it gets crazy out there. But, I'm wondering why you think outside has this developmental quality that you can't replicate somewhere else, even with all of the insane activities that we try to stuff into the periphery of our
We
days.
do. It's I think everybody comes at it from the basis of wanting the best for their kids.
Absolutely.
Um, and the problem is I don't think we have the right information. And that may go back to even just a money thing, which is like, nature things for the most part are free. You may pay, in our state, it costs $10 for the whole year to get into every single state park. I mean, there's not a lot of money there. Whereas, you know, people who offer these cool programs, bilingual or, you know, they're going to advertise and they do have merit. But then the problem is you have all these different voices that are saying, well, take this, take that. You don't want your kid to be behind. Your kid should start music. Your kid, and
Right.
and so we want the best for our kids. Um, but what it turns out, or as it turns out, the nature play, and this is like all the way through life, really. I mean, it's not even just in childhood, but this time in nature, it hits every facet of development. And it's a very lengthy conversation. I mean, movement is one piece of it.
Mm.
The fine motor and large motor, the gross motor, that's another component. So if we want our kids to be able to write, they have to be able to have good writing posture, and so their shoulder has to be strong, and their core has to be strong to be able to sit up, and they have to have good fine motor skills. And so
Mhm.
outside time naturally develops that. Kids hang from branches, and they're using their fingers and their um, they're grasping at small things. Eyesight is a component. We think about vision as 20/20, nearsighted, farsighted, but our ability to use our eyes together um, helps with reading. It helps with tracking words on a page. And so when kids are successful in those early literacy skills, that's going to help them for the rest of their life. It sets them up to be successful. And so even babies, if we put them in a little carrier, a little wrap or a baby carrier,
Mhm.
we take them for a walk. With every step, they're adjusting their eyesight because there's a little bit of up and down motion. And so these experiences outside are helping our kids' eyes work well together. And then the more senses you engage, the more you're learning. So if you go outside, you're engaging all of your senses. You've got the auditory things going on with sort of the different noises that are surround sound. You've got the breeze, you've got things that you can touch and taste and smell and see, and there's variety. Every day it's different, even if it's only in your backyard, or on your porch. So, um, academically, there's this really cool quote by John Holt, and he says, it's something like, if you are living energetically, and if you are living well, um, you're learning, even if we don't know what it is. And so it's sort of like embracing a little bit of that unknown and being okay that it's not quite so linear. Um, Here, I'm going to read it. Here, I've got it here. It says, living is learning. And when children are living fully and energetically and happily, they are learning a lot, even if we don't always know what it is.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so that's been my experience. It's like that experience with the snake. I was like, well, my child has been learning things. And I didn't even know that he was learning such and such. Um, but he still has been learning, and it sort of contributes to this whole person.
Yeah.
So academically, and that seems to be one of the biggest concerns for parents is, how kids are doing academically. And so this really sets kids apart
Mhm.
in so many ways,
You
from the
know,
complex movements to the things that they can learn through nature. There's so much.
I think it's all about balance too. Like, we're not saying go outside in lieu of actually, learning to read. We're saying pair these things together. We're not saying don't learn to swim at a class. We're saying learn to swim and then take it to the pond.
Sure, sure. Yeah, or that, knowing that. it's an enhancer. You know, the
Right.
nature sort of enhances ability. It sets kids up to be successful, maybe so they don't struggle quite as much. Um, and they do just go so well in tandem. We did square foot gardening this year. It's our first time doing a garden. Um, and and so we have these raised garden beds that are 8 by 4. And, we talk about area and perimeter all the time in math. It comes up like every year, and nobody remembers what it is. And like we've talked about this so many times, the perimeter is the rim. Well, then we set up this garden bed and they have 32 squares to figure out what they want
Mm,
to plant. And so it becomes this sort of multidisciplinary, they're learning math, they're learning, botany, so there's a science in there. They're learning about the soil. There's so there's so much depth to it,
mm,
in terms of how nature time helps kids with academics. And I think as they get older, they tend to specialize in things that they're interested in. If one
right.
is interested in farming, well, there's a whole lot you can learn about through farming. And if one is interested in rocks or rock hunting, or if one is interested in geocaching, it's like, well, then you're learning about maps and
Right. Direction and route
Ye
finding and all that good
yes,
stuff.
yes, but the problem is it's not gonna be a checkbox on your report card, and
Right.
so I think as a parent, you have to know that it's still valuable even though it's not
Mm,
part of that linear, process of compulsory education.
absolutely. Hey humans, just a quick break to tell you how you can support the Humans Outside podcast. Did you know we're on Patreon? Patreon allows fans like you to support the podcast through a monthly pledge. By pledging a little cash each month to support the Humans Outside podcast, you can have access to my bonus features, guides, discount codes, and an exclusive episode on, you know what? Actually, just go check it out. You'll also get my eternal gratitude, of course. Check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/humans outside. That's patreon.com/humans outside. Now, back to the show. I want to talk a little bit about the practicalities of this. So I know you
Sure.
have a couple of trackers on your website. Do you encourage people to track this daily, or how do you encourage people to hit the goal if they are as goal oriented as I am?
Yeah, I do encourage people to track it daily. We have ours up on our fridge, and I think people just sort of have it in a place, where they walk in the house. And it is really an out of the box thing. In the 80s or the 90s, no one was tracking their time outside because everybody was doing it. Kids were playing outside after school, until dinner, and things
Right.
weren't quite so busy. So I think we've been doing this since 2011. It's so easy to lose the time. There are so many things that we need to do just on a daily basis, and there are so many great opportunities out there. So what we have is at our house, we have our tracker. It's up on our fridge, and it's just something that we include the kids on, because their world is full of technology, and so this is modeling to them, um, that they should be intentional about hands-on life and not having their faces in front of screens. And I think that when they become parents, um, technology will be even more prevalent. For example, we were at Costco the other day. For the first time in a long time because of coronavirus, but they have these fridges out that have screens on the front.
Mm.
Full screen, there's video, big
My
screen.
11-year-old is really interested in having one of those, by the way. This will not be happening in his life, but this is like
Right,
my 11-year-old is my 8-year-old is like, we went backpacking and he literally packed in a stick, his favorite stick from home. Okay. Like we're backpacking and he packs in a stick and the backpacking was his idea. My 11-year-old is, my best life includes a hotel. So
yeah,
just for
yeah. Everyone's
context. Okay.
everyone's got their thing, a
Sorry.
little
So you were
different.
at Costco, you saw
Yeah,
a
so that's true.
screen
So,
fridge.
there's this thought that, if you have an 11-year-old, and we have an 11-year-old as well, they're a decade away possibly from becoming a parent themselves. And so what we are trying to
Don't
do
say that.
through I know, but it's not really. I think what we're trying to do is to model balance for our kids, because we have such a screen pervasive society. And it wasn't necessary, decades ago. But now, um, first of all, there's like a slew of opportunities, and good ones of things that could take up our time. And also, there's a lot of screen pressure, and screens are, the companies make them so they're a little bit addicting and that sort of thing. So we're up against a lot. So we have our tracker sheet out, even though I am so fully aware of the benefits and um, have been doing this for, 9 years. I still have to have a goal. Otherwise, the time slips away. And
Mm,
um, it's just one of those things that's too important to miss. And I think the yearly goal, it gives parents breathing room, for the biggest question is, "Well, what about winter?" And I get
right.
it. I'm like, I don't wanna go stand out in the frigid cold. I mean, there is that whole thing about there's no such thing as bad weather, but I kind of disagree.
I mean,
You know?
okay, like, if you have enough jackets, right? But, like, even,
Yeah, but you can be miserable.
yeah, and I even say it, like, there's just no bad weather, just bad clothing, but I do agree with you that that only goes to a point, right? Because I am going to go outside no matter what every single day for at least 20 consecutive minutes. But I would be a big old liar if I said that at 19 minutes I wasn't standing in my driveway waiting for the 20th minute to hit on
Right.
the days where we have, sub-zero temperatures and
Yeah.
60-mile-an-hour winds, which by the way
Yeah.
is not an exaggeration whatsoever. That
Right.
happens. And my
Right.
jacket is very, very warm and I kick myself every time I put it on for not buying it sooner. Okay. But it's
Yeah.
still, I
And
mean,
there's
we're
just
clicking
less,
out.
maybe there's less to do. Like if you have a little one and
Right.
the snow is deep. So,
Mhm.
the year, I don't think any other, if you're wanting to get outside and you're wanting to get outside a lot, and the three, that Charlotte Mason, she's old, like she's, dead and gone. But
Yeah.
there is research that backs her those time frames. So Angela Hanscom has her book. It's called Barefoot and Balanced. She's a pediatric occupational therapist, and so she's saying that kids are presenting with a lot of difficulties, and that it's solely stemming from missing this nature play. And so she talks about. I mean, it's extensive. I mean, she says you know for like preschoolers, it should be 6 to 8 hours of free play a day, ideally outside, but they should just have so much play. And it goes on through, and the smallest amount of time is for high schoolers, but it's still like 3 to 4 hours. They still should be getting downtime, and it's research backed. So anecdotally, you see it as well. I saw it with their own kids, but the research definitely points to the fact that kids need hours of movement and hours of sort of that time when they're directing their own time. And it's just really easy to not have the time if you don't prioritize it.
So, I
So,
mean, legitimately, what about winter? Do you make up your, because there are bad days. There are days that you're sick.
yeah, so we don't go outside every single day.
Mm,
Um, and that's sort of how we started. We started by picking like the 3 best days of the week. We kind of revolve our life around the weather, which is different than how other people live, I think. And it's
mhm,
not how we were living before. You have your like Tuesday night is this, and Wednesday night is Awana, and Thursday night is, whereas all of a sudden I started to change and say, well, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday look great this week. We can go strawberry picking, or we can go sledding, or depending on the season. Um,
right.
and so, we're trying to pick the optimal times to go out, working with the seasons,
Mhm,
and knowing that there's going to be spring, summer, and fall days where we're out for 8 hours, and maybe in the winter we were only out for one, or there's going to be a week in the winter where everyone has the flu, we didn't go out at all. Um, and so the year-long goal really works pretty well.
right. Because you
Um,
have a year to make the time.
you do. You do. And you embrace the different seasons. And
Right.
so we've been trying to do that a little more with winter, like, cooking, having a bonfire out in the winter is a
Mm,
fun thing. Or, just the snow type things are actually really fun. but, they're like you said, they're not fun at sub-zero temperatures.
No. No, and, I find the other thing is that, like, the fact that I've made this goal of going outside has necessitated I find something to do outside, and so we
Yeah,
have a lot of outdoor winter hobbies that we never had before. Now, I'm keenly aware of my, privilege in that too, because I can afford to go buy skis for my family, right? Which a lot of
sure,
people feel like,
sure,
can't do or feel like they can't do or don't wanna do or whatever, right? Like, so I'm very aware of
sure.
that. I have a privilege. We're a military family, and our base has a downhill ski area that is affordable, and we can afford season passes to it because they
Right.
are very, very inexpensive. Whereas downhill skiing is famously a rich person sport because it's so expensive to go
Right,
downhill
we have never gone.
skiing.
We've got 5 kids, we've never
Right,
been.
it's
I don't
so
think we'll ever go.
expensive. But, this coming year, we've decided that I mean, it's the middle of summer when we're recording this, and we're already thinking about winter. Talk about Alaska life.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
this coming winter, we've decided that instead of downhill skiing, we're going to do a more accessible version, which is in our area, cross country skiing. It doesn't
Mhm.
require a long drive. We'll be signing my kids up for, cross country ski team, which is done through the school, and
Oh,
it'll be
that's neat.
yeah, it'd be very affordable. Actually, fun Alaska fact for my listeners, you know how I love this. Most a good portion of the U.S. Olympic team from for cross country skiing comes from this part of Alaska, and they train not terribly far from my house. And so
Oh,
it's
that's
really it's
really
an exciting
cool.
opportunity, right? But like these are things that we never would have done if we weren't trying to be outside in the wintertime. You find
Yeah,
ways to move.
you have to be creative, and I think, and life is fluid. I think that all of these things are worthwhile to teach our kids, which is like, hey, this is something important. How can we make it happen?
Right.
Or as kids get older, you can't take a 3-year-old cross country skiing, but when you have an 11-year-old, you're sort of always adapting, and I think that that journey of life. And showing kids that we adapt and we change through the seasons and is a valuable lesson for them because their life is not going to be static. They're going to have all these changes and things that come up, and so we're modeling so much for our kids when we model like what you said, thinking ahead and trying to figure it out and having things that we value, um and and working our way around those values.
Right. And you can take a 3-year-old cross country skiing, by the way. You may not want to, and it may not be that fun, but it can be done.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
actually do it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
guess I've seen that. To
The kids
really
I've seen skiing,
I've seen 18-month-olds. People have
but
posted some things, doing
yeah,
downhill. So you
it goes
actually
back to
kids.
what you're
Yeah,
saying, right? About that balance and about the movement. I mean, can you take a 35-year-old downhill skiing? Maybe not. But but I've
sure.
seen 18-month-olds ripping
Yeah,
a
you're
ski
right.
hill, and I'm over here like, huh, maybe not today, Amy.
Yeah,
But these little guys who have been just doing it since they have been old enough to stand are out there
yeah,
doing things that I can't even imagine. It's incredible. Okay,
yeah.
so one more practicality question. Are you
Mhm.
using a stopwatch? Are you rounding up? Like, how are you tracking this
Okay, yeah,
process?
practicalities. I do round, and, you know, I did I used to use I don't use a stopwatch. I'm like, we tend to get places if we're going somewhere, we tend to get there at, we're going on a hike and we meet our friends at 10:30, um, and we stayed till 3. So,
Mhm.
I'm loose with it. I'm not going minute by minute. My daughter, who is 10, she's really into it. She has a stopwatch. She
Mm.
carries it everywhere. She puts it, like, on the door, it's magnetic, and so, like, every time we go outside, it's like, "Beep."
It's so
So,
funny.
I mean, she counts all the things. She seems a little obsessive with it. I'm actually kind of a little concerned. I'm like, "You don't have to count every single minute." But it's fun for her. She's trying to, see how many hours that,
Yeah.
she's getting, and that's good for her
As a
math. It's
minute
good for
counter, as a minute counter, I endorse her actions. Sounds
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you
so
have different
she's
personalities.
going, yeah. And so it's just an overall. It's really even not necessarily about the number, because like I said, the number originally actually for us was 1,200, and I've had, when you talk about privilege, I've had parents who contact and say, "Well, look, I'm a single parent.
Mhm.
I only have my child for 50% of the time, and what I can do is I can do 200 hours a year." And so it's not about necessarily the exact number. It is research backed, you know, to a degree for kids development, but also life is life. And so we have to take our situation and, figure out how can if outside time is so important for kids, how can we work it in a way that works and in a way that is doable for different situation. And time itself is really the biggest factor there. Some people have more than others, and that's just the truth. People have
Right.
different work situations and different custody situations
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
um and all of
So
those different
it's
things.
about just it's not so much about the 1,000 hours, although as you said, it's research back. It's about making spending outside a priority, time outside a priority,
Right,
a part of your lifestyle, something that
right.
you donate your time to in a way,
Yeah,
and put
yeah.
above other things.
Right. It's a choice, and it's about valuing that because the benefits are so great both for our kids and for us, and then also, for a relationship as a whole. And we have
Right.
these sort of foundational memories together and foundational experiences. So you can't really get more bang for your buck than
Right.
like the simplicity of nature time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so give me a couple of bits of advice for people who want to get started on this. Is your
Sure.
advice as simple as go outside right now?
Well, that was so my experience was just trying it one time.
Right.
Because I had no idea. It was so sort of out of the realm of normalcy and what we did. So, my advice number 1 would be to try it. It would be to take, one day where you could go outside for 3 or 4 hours and to pack the food and to try it and to see what happens. I think friends are helpful. I always say the 3 things that you need are food, friends, and a first aid kit. Um, you know, if you're sort of, nervous about trying a long day outside, invite a friend along, and
Mm,
that always helps. I think hiking is a good first like trial run. Like if you can find a
mhm,
mile hike or a mile and a half hike, a loop, that has a beginning and an end, and you just
mm,
kind of follow the child's lead, and you bring snacks or a stroller or whatever. Um, our hikes are always fairly successful. The kids they like the movement, they like to find the fallen trees that they can climb on and, they
mhm,
find interesting things. So, but really it's about, I think, trying it once or twice. And, it looks different for every family. It looks different for different locations, but, um, the value is there, no matter if you're in the desert or you're in the mountains or,
right, right. And
there's
always
different things
bring
you can find.
snacks.
Always have food and water, and the first aid kit is important too.
Yes.
And
Many's
friends,
in my house.
if we're on a hike, I think friends are important for a lot of reasons. It obviously is great for kids' social skills, you know, um, but then it's just good for safety as well. Uh,
Right, right,
we've got another adult there, and um,
yeah.
so it just the kids do better, when they got some little friends there. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the motivation level I've seen of children after meeting their friend on the trail, but versus just
yes,
being outside, it's like,
sure.
one moment I die, I perish. The next moment, oh, what's up? It's my friend. I'm
Yeah,
good now.
sure. And really that's how we've always done it. It's never, for the most part, it's never been just our family. We've always been with other people. So,
Yeah, it's great to have a
um,
community.
yeah, for sure.
So we've come to a part of our show, although I really could talk to you for the rest of the day, but you want to get outside, and so do I,
Yeah.
where we talk about just some of our favorite things that make our lives easier. So tell me, what is your favorite outdoor gear?
It's such a great question. I just I feel like we're very simple. So, water bottles. We have, like, the, Contigo water bottles. Is that, like, a
Hmm.
silly answer? I mean,
No,
or,
it's
like, the
great.
clean canteen, just, like, those oh, I don't know if they're aluminum, whatever they are,
Hmm.
those insulated water bottles, because we always need water bottles, um, and a good backpack, um, and a s
What kind of backpacks do you like for your kids?
well, um They've got Osprey backpacks. I mean, it's
Mhm.
one someone's got an REI backpack. We just find we've got 5 kids. We find
Yeah.
whatever we can on sale and the
Ain't
as
that
we
the
get.
truth? Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
I
No,
got
I
the
like it.
spot, a couple spots for little pockets so they can save
Yeah.
things and
But we're talking about, like, an outdoor like, a
an
it's
outdoorsy, not a school backpack, but like
right.
an
It's a
outdoorsy
backpack
backpack.
designed for
Yeah,
this purpose. It's
more
got some
rugged.
padding, it's a little
Yeah,
rugged, it's got a nice water
yeah,
bottle spot instead of just like, "Where is this water bottle supposed to go?" Which is the
right.
conversation I had with myself over the school backpack my kid grabbed the other day to go to his hike,
Right.
just like that.
Yeah.
So
So I think
and
we don't have a ton of outdoor gear. We basically have this is like the silliest answer. We basically have stuff for food and water. So
Mhm.
we did buy a Yeti cooler a couple years ago because my coolers were always getting ruined.
Yeah.
So we have like receptacles for food and water and then food and water.
Yeah. And
That's
with that
basically
yeah.
it. A
Sounds like
backpack and the
your
water bottle.
favorite outdoor gear and your most essential outdoor gear at the same time,
Because we
you
really
know?
don't need much. I mean,
No.
um, we don't do anything really exceptional. I mean, it'd be cool if we were like rock climbers but we
Yeah.
haven't ventured into any of that.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. I had somebody on the podcast once who told us their most essential gear was, snacks. Someone else who said it was a good attitude, which all of these things are true.
Sure.
All of these things
Yeah,
are true.
I would agree with both of those.
So, final thing, if you close your eyes and picture a favorite outdoor moment, where are you and what are you doing?
Um, I know these are such tricky questions. I think because we have 9,000 hours of experiences, since we started, but I'm definitely a water girl. I would definitely say, those waterfall hikes, have been in the riding the waterfalls and the kids sort of jumping off the big rocks into pools of water below. Um, I like tubing down rivers. So,
Mm,
I'm a water girl. Anytime we're around water, those are some of my favorite, but honestly, it's like I've never had an outdoor experience, even if it's just in our yard, at the most simple place, that I have regretted doing,
mm,
because you always see something cool. There's always sort of something. It's so random. It's like going to the thrift shop, You
yeah,
don't know what you're going to find, but then you're going to find something,
that's right.
you know? So,
Ginny, thank you so much for being on the Humans Outside podcast
yeah,
today. I appreciate your time.
thanks for having me, Amy.
That's it for this week's episode of the Humans Outside podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, give us a little love and leave a rating and review to make it easier for other listeners to find the podcast too. Until next time, we'll see you out there.